November in Boston is a season when cold winds sweep through the streets and fallen leaves dance in the air. Martha Carter gazed out the hospital window and sighed deeply. Dressed in her white nurse's uniform, she picked up the chart for her next patient. Martha's face had a gentle smile, but there was also a hint of contemplation in her expression. "Thank you so much, Ms. Carter. You saved my son," said a mother who had completed discharge preparations, holding her young boy's hand as she spoke to Martha. Martha immediately brightened her expression and gently stroked the boy's head. "Jimmy, it looks like your fever has gone down. But make sure you take your medicine. Can you promise me that?" The boy nodded emphatically and smiled shyly at Martha. Moments like these were why she loved her job. During her 7 years at St. Mary's Community Hospital, Martha had earned the trust of her patients and the respect of her colleagues. After seeing the mother and child off, Martha checked her watch. 1 more hour until her shift ended. She planned to pick up Jacob from daycare a little early today. Just thinking about her 8-month-old's smile lightened her weary heart. "Martha, you had a call from Dr. Daniel," the head nurse Janet called out to her. Martha's expression hardened at the mention of that name. "What about?" "He wants to see Jacob over Thanksgiving weekend." Martha nodded silently. 2 years ago, when she ended her marriage to pediatrician Daniel Carter, her life changed dramatically. At the beginning of their marriage, she thought they would understand each other as they both walked the same medical path. But for Daniel, work was always the top priority. "It's an emergency surgery, this paper is important," for a conference presentation, the excuses were always the same. When Martha became pregnant, he was happy, but he never actually made time for her or the baby. Even the day before her due date, he was away at a medical conference in another state. When Jacob was born, it took Daniel 6 hours to get to the delivery room. Their different values gradually deepened the divide between them. While Martha wanted to cherish family time, Daniel constantly prioritized his career. Eventually, they had to admit that their differences in life perspectives were greater than their love for each other. The divorce was amicable, but the family's reaction was different. Martha's parents, Robert and Diane, refused to understand their daughter's decision. For them, Daniel was the ideal son-in-law. Successful doctor, from a good family, social status, he met all the criteria they valued. "Why did you ruin a wonderful marriage?" her mother asked repeatedly. Her father didn't say much, but his disappointed gaze was always directed at his daughter. Her brother Greg and his wife Elizabeth also took sides against Martha's decision. Her brother in particular, who was golf buddies with Daniel, openly expressed anger at his sister's selfish choice. After the divorce, family gatherings became painful for Martha. Every time Daniel's name came up, she felt as if she was being blamed. Especially when she started her new life as a single mother, her family's cold attitude became even more pronounced. "How do you plan to raise a child as a single mother? Jacob needs a father. You might still be able to work things out if you talk to Daniel." Even so, Martha didn't regret her choice. She maintained her attitude of living independently and positively. When she finished her shift and picked up Jacob from daycare, Martha's heart felt a little lighter. Looking at her son's innocent smile and bright eyes made all the hardships feel worthwhile. Back at her apartment, while feeding her son dinner, she thought about Thanksgiving next week. Her parents invited the whole family to Thanksgiving dinner every year. She didn't attend last year, but this year would be different. Martha planned to bring Jacob. And though she hadn't told her family, she had also prepared a special surprise. Under her bed was a large envelope hidden away. Part of what she had received from Daniel after the divorce. It was meant to be a special gift for her family. Martha held her son and thought about that envelope, smiling quietly. "Tomorrow will be a special day, Jacob," she whispered, kissing her son's soft cheek. In her heart, she felt conflicted between wanting to repair her relationship with her family and wanting to maintain her dignity. Thanksgiving morning, warm light streamed into Martha's apartment. The scent of rosemary wafted through the room from the herb pot by the window. Martha had risen early for this special day. "You slept well," Jacob," she said, lifting her son from the bed. The feel of Jacob's soft hair against her fingers filled Martha's heart with warmth. His big blue eyes resembled his father Daniel's. "Today we're going to see Grandma and Grandpa," Martha spoke cheerfully, though Jacob probably couldn't understand. From the closet, she took out a new dress purchased last month. Made of deep red velvet fabric with an elegant collar design that beautifully showcased her neckline. Standing before the mirror, putting on the dress, Martha felt a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Thanksgiving with family after 2 years. She had planned for weeks for this day. A large envelope on the dining table contained a special gift for her family. She had also prepared a homemade pumpkin pie. As her mother always said, homemade food is the key to opening hearts. Holding Jacob, she prepared to leave the apartment. The baby bag was packed with diapers, a change of clothes, milk, and her son's favorite stuffed animal. Finally, she picked up the envelope and checked its contents once more. This might change everything, she whispered to herself. Her parents' house was in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Boston. The house where Martha grew up. The 2-story brick house was purchased with her father's retirement money. Her brother Greg's family would also be gathering there today. Parking in front of her parents' house, Martha took a deep breath. Jacob was asleep in his car seat in the back. She gently lifted him up and struggled to balance him while carrying the envelope and pumpkin pie in one hand as she walked along the garden path. Old trees swayed in the wind, and fallen leaves rustled beneath her feet. Vivid memories of her childhood playing in this garden came flooding back. Climbing trees with her father, baking cookies with her mother, playing tag with her brother on summer evenings. Each precious memory wrapped around her heart with warmth. As she approached the entrance, the sounds of laughter and the aroma of cooking wafted from the house. Martha's tension eased a little. The light shining from the windows gave a sense of comfort. But when she reached the doorstep, Martha's feet froze. A small handwritten sign was hanging on the door. Martha stared at it in disbelief. The sign read in awkward handwriting. "Family dinner, no single mothers allowed." At first, she thought it was a bad joke. Surely someone's prank. But the sound of her family's laughter from beyond the window denied that. The scene visible through the window, her father reading a newspaper by the fireplace, her mother bustling around the kitchen, her brother and sister-in-law sitting on the sofa with their children. It looked like a perfect family portrait. The only thing missing from that picture was Martha and Jacob. She felt her face grow hot. Humiliation, anger, and above all, a deep sadness washed over her. Jacob stirred in her arms, beginning to wake up. The baby's innocent expression was in stark contrast to this cruel situation. "Mommy's here." "It's okay," she whispered in a trembling voice as she stood frozen. Should she knock on the door or just leave? Various thoughts raced through her mind. In the light spilling from the window, Martha saw her shadow on the ground. The shadow of a woman and a small baby. It looked lonely, yet somehow strong. In that moment, something was decided within her. Slowly taking out the envelope, she added a note. "I thought we could be a real family. This is my last gift." And quietly, she placed it on the doormat. The homemade pumpkin pie beside it. Holding Jacob gently, Martha turned on her heel. Without looking back, she walked down the garden path. Only the sound of leaves crunching beneath her feet broke the silence. Back at the car, after securing Jacob in his car seat, Martha finally let her tears flow. But they weren't tears of weakness. There was a light of firm resolve in her eyes. "We'll be fine, Jacob. We have each other." As she started the engine, Martha looked up at the house one last time. The window lights reflected in her tears, shimmering. That shimmer seemed to reflect the inner strength she possessed. The car slowly pulled away, and Martha Carter and her son left the place of rejection. Her heart was wounded, but even more, it was filled with conviction. Tonight, she and her son would celebrate Thanksgiving on their own. And tomorrow, a new day would begin. Without knowing what the envelope she had left behind would bring. On the way home, the faces of her parents and brother appeared and disappeared in Martha's mind. Had she done something wrong? Should she have tried harder? But she had no regrets about the choices she had made in her life. Both her divorce from Daniel and her decision to raise her son alone were choices she believed were right from the bottom of her heart. The courage to walk your own path, that was what she wanted to teach her son. She felt it was her responsibility as a mother to show him how to live strongly while protecting him from such rejection. Back at her apartment, Martha took out a restaurant takeout Thanksgiving dinner from the refrigerator. She had prepared it just in case. She heated it up, lit candles on the small table, and began a special dinner for just her and her son. "Happy Thanksgiving, Jacob," she said, kissing her son's cheek. The morning after Thanksgiving, soft sunlight streamed into Martha's apartment. Outside the window, snow that had fallen overnight reflected the sunlight, brightening the entire room. Martha was brewing morning coffee in the kitchen, its aroma spreading throughout the room. Jacob's wakeful voice came through the baby monitor. Martha smiled and headed to the bedroom. As she approached her son's bed, Jacob raised both hands to greet her. His tiny hands and soft smile eased yesterday's pain. "Good morning, my little prince." Martha picked up her son and returned to the kitchen. While preparing breakfast, she found herself reflecting on yesterday, the words on that sign, the feeling of being excluded from the family circle, and the envelope she had left at the doorstep. "I wonder how that went," she murmured. What was in the envelope? Martha knew very well. During the divorce, Daniel had offered her more property division than expected. Though she initially refused, he insisted it was for Jacob, and she finally accepted the substantial amount. With part of those funds, Martha had prepared proof of loan repayment for her parents and tickets for a round-the-world trip for the entire family. It was a luxurious package that could be used any time within a year, specially arranged by a close friend at a travel agency. Martha well remembered that her parents had dreamed of traveling the world for years. And it would have been an educational journey for her brother's children as well. "It's not that I wanted them to accept it," she told herself while preparing Jacob's cereal. "I just wanted to show them that I love my family." In the morning stillness, her cell phone suddenly rang. The display showed "Mother." Martha's heart began to race. After yesterday, she couldn't expect anything good from this call. For a moment, she considered ignoring it, but she took a deep breath and answered. "Martha." Diane's voice lacked its usual calmness. In the background, she could hear something breaking and excited male voices, probably her father and brother. "What you left behind, is this real?" Her mother's voice was trembling. Martha sat down in a chair and answered quietly. "What do you mean?" "The contents of that envelope." Martha remained silent, waiting for her mother to continue. On the other end, she heard someone picking something up. The proof of loan repayment, the round-the-world trip tickets, all of this. Her mother's voice choked. "They're torn up." Someone tore everything into pieces and threw it away. Martha's throat went dry. She hadn't torn them up herself. It must have been someone in her family. Deep down, perhaps she had sensed this might happen. "Mom, do you know what was hanging on the door when I visited yesterday?" Martha's voice was quiet but firm. "What was it?" "A sign that said, 'Family dinner, no single mothers allowed.'" On the other end, she heard her mother's breath stop. The background noise also quieted somewhat. "There was no such thing. I saw it with my own eyes. Mom, I came with Jacob in my arms, but we weren't welcomed as family." After a moment of silence, her mother's voice returned, now weak and shocked. "I don't know about any sign, we were waiting for you all morning. When you didn't come, I was about to call you. But the sign was there. Someone put it up." Just then, another voice came through the phone. A low, angry voice. It was her brother Greg. "Martha, I put it up. But it was meant to be just a little joke." Anger welled up in Martha's heart. A joke? excluding his own sister and baby nephew from the family and calling it a joke. Greg, that was far from a joke. I know, his voice cut in. I just. He seemed at a loss for words. The phone returned to her mother. Martha, we didn't know anything. When you didn't come, everyone was worried. And this morning, when we opened the door. In the background, she could now hear her father's voice too. Why did she do this? What pushed her to this point? Martha closed her eyes. They must have opened her envelope by now and found its contents torn up. And they were beginning to realize the gravity of their actions. The contents of that envelope were prepared using part of the property settlement I received during my divorce, she explained slowly. Round-trip tickets for the world trip that Dad and Mom had dreamed of, and proof of your home loan repayment, for the entire family. On the other end, someone gasped sharply. But why are they torn up? Her mother's voice trembled. I didn't tear them. Yesterday, after seeing the sign, I just left the envelope in front of the door and went home. Silence followed. Martha gazed out the kitchen window. The snow scene was beautiful, a pure white world stretching out. Jacob was quietly eating cereal in his high chair, occasionally smiling at her. What does this mean? Her father's voice came closer to the phone. Someone tore them up? Martha sighed. I don't know. But it's okay, don't worry about it anymore. It was just meant to be a present. If it wasn't received, that's fine. Martha's calm voice surprised even herself. Yesterday's pain was still in her heart, but this morning somehow felt different. The fact that the envelope's contents had been torn up gave her a sort of liberation. No more expectations or attachments. Just accepting reality. Martha. Her mother's voice came back. We. She was struggling for words. Mom, it's okay. Jacob and I are doing fine. Don't worry about us. From the other end of the phone, her brother's voice could now be heard. Martha, I shouldn't have put up that sign. It was meant to be a stupid joke. But nobody laughed. Mom and Dad were looking forward to seeing you. Greg's voice was tinged with regret. But Martha's heart had already crossed a line. Greg, you've been criticizing me for becoming a single mother all along. You took Daniel's side and blamed me. Wasn't that sign your true feelings? Silence continued on the other end. She could hear her father's low voice asking, Son, is this true? I just. Greg's words trailed off. Martha took a deep breath. Everyone, listen. I love you all. I prepared those gifts with that in mind. But if you can't accept my choices or my way of life, that's fine too. Jacob and I will just walk our own path. No, Martha, her mother's voice returned urgently. We love you. It's just. Martha looked at Jacob, her heart warming at the sight of him laughing innocently. Mom, I understand what you're trying to say. But now, actions are needed more than words. After hanging up the phone, Martha let out a deep sigh. The burden she had carried for years felt a little lighter. She picked up her son and pointed to the pure white world visible from the window. Look, Jacob. A new day is beginning. The afternoon stillness enveloped Martha's apartment. After spending the morning with Jacob in the snow-covered park, Martha had put her son down for a nap and was sitting in a small chair by the window. In her hands was an unfinished knitting project, a small sweater she was making for Jacob. She found peace in the feel of the yarn and the rhythmic movement of the knitting needles. Several hours had passed since the morning phone call. There had been no contact from her family since then. Martha wondered if her words had been too harsh. But at the same time, she felt there was no going back. For years, she had tried to meet her family's expectations. Now, she was finally living her own life. The knitting needles paused. Looking outside, she saw that it had begun to snow again. White crystals danced down from the sky, wrapping the entire city in a quiet white blanket. Gazing at this scenery where winter's beauty and harshness coexisted, Martha was reflecting on her life. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Martha set aside her knitting and stood up. An unexpected visitor. Thinking it might be her friend Jennifer, she headed to the door. When she opened the door, Martha's breath caught. Before her stood her entire family. Father Robert, Mother Diane, Brother Greg and his wife Elizabeth, and their 2 nieces and nephews. Everyone was covered in snow, and deep remorse showed on their faces. Her mother's eyes were red with tears, her father had lost his usual dignified posture, and her brother hung his head. Martha. Her father spoke first. His voice was the weakest Martha had ever heard it. May we come in? Silently, Martha stepped aside and invited them in. As each family member passed by her, none could meet her eyes. Her brother, the last to pass, glanced at her briefly before looking away. With the family gathered in the living room, a quiet tension filled the space. No one had the courage to speak first. Martha went to the kitchen to prepare tea. Her hands trembled slightly, not from anger but from tension at the unexpected situation. Let's talk over tea, she said quietly. Martha distributed cups to each person and finally sat down herself. Why couldn't you think of me as family? Martha's quiet question broke the room's silence. It wasn't an accusation, but a genuine question. Her father took a deep breath and slowly began. Martha, I was wrong. When Daniel left, I was disappointed. He was like the son I wanted. A successful doctor, a respected figure. And a person of more value than your daughter, Martha quietly interjected. Her father's face twisted with pain. No, that's not it. I'm just a man with old-fashioned ideas. I thought families should stay together. When you chose to leave him, I felt it as a personal defeat. Your defeat? When it's my life. Yes, that was the mistake, her father bowed his head. I was imposing my values on you. I should have respected your choices. Her mother spoke next. Her voice trembled with tears. Martha, I failed to protect you. When Greg put up that sign, I should have stopped him. But I said nothing. I couldn't get over the shock of losing Daniel, and I blamed you. That was shameful of me as a mother, as a human being. Martha listened to their words in silence. She had imagined this moment for a long time. But actually seeing her family apologize was complicated. Her emotions swung between anger and forgiveness. The sign was, my fault, her brother Greg said in a heavy tone. He couldn't look Martha in the eye. It was meant to be a stupid joke. But the truth is, it came from jealousy. Martha, you've always had talent. Beautiful, smart, loved by everyone. I always felt like I was living in your shadow. And seeing you stay strong even as a single mother, that made me even more jealous. Martha was surprised by Greg's words. She had never imagined her brother being jealous of her. Greg. No, listen, he continued. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just criticizing your life to hide my own smallness. And yesterday, I put up that sign. No one laughed, but I didn't say anything. And this morning, when we found that envelope. His voice choked. It was me. I tore up the contents. When I opened the envelope and saw what was inside, I lost myself in jealousy and anger. I was furious that you had such money. That you could easily pay off our loan that we've struggled with for years, that you could give us tickets for a world trip. The room fell silent again. Greg's wife Elizabeth held his hand, quietly crying. The children sat quietly in the corner. Their young eyes reflected confusion at the complexities of the adult world. Martha stood up and walked to the window. The snow was still falling, coloring the world white. She was undecided whether to forgive them or close the door to her heart. Just then, Jacob's cry came from the bedroom. He seemed to have woken from his nap. Martha immediately went to him and soon returned with her son in her arms. Jacob's presence changed the atmosphere in the room. His innocent smile lightened the heavy air somewhat. He looked around the room at the strangers with curious eyes and suddenly laughed in a bright voice. Holding Jacob, Martha surveyed her family. "This is my son, Jacob. Your grandson and nephew. He will need family love many times in the future." For the first time, a light of hope appeared on her parents' faces. Her mother reached out and said in a trembling voice, "May I hold him?" Martha hesitated for a moment but slowly handed Jacob to her mother. Diane held her grandson for the first time, and tears welled up. Such a beautiful child. Her father also approached and gently held his grandson's tiny hand. "Martha, will you give us a chance to know him? And a chance to know you again?" Martha took a deep breath. Various emotions swirled in her heart. But seeing her son smiling happily in his grandmother's arms, she made her decision. "You tore up the presents, but you cannot tear up my heart," she said quietly. "We need to have many conversations. It will take time to rebuild trust. But for Jacob's sake, for my sake, and for the whole family's sake, I think it's worth the effort." A quiet sense of relief spread through the room. It wasn't complete reconciliation, but the possibility of a new beginning. Greg stood up and approached his sister. "Martha, I'm really sorry. From now on, I want to support you and Jacob as a brother." Martha nodded slightly. "Show me with actions, not just words." Outside the window, the snow had stopped, and thin sunlight began to shine. Light reflected off the silver world, filling the room with a warm glow. Martha stood in that light, watching her family interact with her son. She knew today wouldn't solve all their problems. But it was the beginning of a new path. A year later, Boston was once again wrapped in the bustle of Thanksgiving. From Martha's apartment window, colorful autumn leaves were visible, signaling the changing seasons. The sweet aroma of pumpkin pie wafted from the kitchen, and small footsteps ran around the living room floor. "Jacob, if you run like that, you'll fall," Martha called to her son with a laugh. At a year and a half, Jacob had recently learned to walk and was exploring the room with a joy-filled face. His bright laughter breathed new life into this apartment. The doorbell rang, and Martha wiped her hands as she headed to the door. When she opened it, her parents' smiling faces greeted her. "Mom, Dad, welcome." Diane embraced Martha, and Robert gently placed his hand on his daughter's shoulder. Behind them stood Greg. "Alone? Where's Elizabeth?" Martha asked. Greg's expression clouded slightly. "She couldn't come. We're separated." Many things had changed over the past year. Greg and Elizabeth's marriage was at a crossroads. Ironically, Greg was now in a situation close to being a single parent himself, facing his children. He was finally beginning to truly understand Martha's position. The children. Waiting at Mom and Dad's house. "They're helping with tonight's preparations," Greg smiled. Over the past year, Martha's relationship with her family had been gradually repaired. It started with short weekly visits and eventually developed into regular family gatherings. Her parents came to adore Jacob, and photos of their grandson now adorned their home. Greg, in particular, had changed greatly. He began to see his sister's strength with new eyes, and when his own marriage began to crumble, he even sought Martha's help. "Why don't we gather here today, and then have dinner at our house?" Diane suggested. "Everyone's preparing for it." Martha smiled. Unlike previous Thanksgivings, this year the plan was for the whole family to gather at Martha's home first, then move to her parents' house. This was the beginning of a new family tradition. In the living room, Jacob was circling around his grandfather, laughing with delight. Robert was absorbed in playing with his grandson, pure joy on his face. Martha took out a small envelope from the kitchen table. "This is a present for everyone." Greg looked at it with a tense expression. The memory of last year must have come back to him. "Don't worry," Martha said. "This one won't be torn." Inside the envelope were a photo of a small lakeside cottage and a reservation confirmation. "I thought we could spend the Christmas holiday together. It's not a luxurious world tour, but it's perfect," Diane said with emotion. Martha looked out the window. Fallen leaves danced in the wind, announcing the arrival of a new season. She took a deep breath and etched this moment of being surrounded by her family's laughter into her heart. What matters isn't where you go, but who you go with. "Not money, but love," she said quietly. The family nodded silently to her words. They were finally beginning to understand the meaning of a real family.